Hello and welcome back. These will be the notes for 5.4 standard form of linear equations. There is a PDF available on the website if you'd like to print it out and follow along. First thing I'm going to talk about is what is standard form. It's simply another form of linear equation that allows you to find both the x and y intercepts, but allows you to find them quickly. The standard form is ax plus by equals c. The x and the y are your variables. The a, b, and c are numbers in the problem. The a and the b are actually the coefficients of x and y, and it's always in that form. A is the coefficient of x, and b is the coefficient of y, and c is some constant value. Another important feature is that a, b, and c are integer values. They cannot be fractions, they cannot be decimals. So if you have any fractions or decimals in the problem, you must clear the decimals or clear the fractions. X and y have to be on the same side together. But also a and b, which is the coefficient of x and y, cannot be 0, because if either one of them was 0, then you would not have an x or you would not have a y value, which means you would not actually have standard form. You have a different kind of equation. We have 3 equations down here, but only one of them is in standard form. The first one is obviously not, because you have a y on one side and the x on the other side. That is not standard form. That is actually slope intercept form. The second one down almost looks like standard form. At least the x and the y are together on one side, but we have this 2/3 out in front of x, so the coefficient of x is actually 2/3. And according to this up here, the coefficient of x, which is a, has to be an integer value. So it's almost standard form, but it is not standard form. Not standard. The bottom one has an a value of 6, a b value of 3, and a c value of 24, and they are all integer values, which makes it standard form. First example, finding the x and y intercepts. We did say that standard form allows you to find the x and y intercepts very quickly. One thing you need to know is at the x-intercept, we're going to abbreviate that xint, at the x-intercept, the value of y has to be a 0. So basically, we're going to put a 0 in place of y, and 5 times 0 is just 0. So this becomes 0, which basically just drops out of the problem, and all we do now is solve for x. Well, if I have 2x is equal to 20, and I divide by 2, then my x value would equal 10. So my x-intercept is actually just 10, but the location on the graph would be 10, 0. To find the y-intercept, and we're just going to abbreviate that yint, the value of x needs to be 0. So we're going to put a 0 in place of x. 2 times 0 is 0, so this becomes 0, which basically just drops out of the problem. Just cover it up, and we solve what's left over. 5y equals 20. Solve for y. Y equals 4. Now the y-intercept itself is actually just the number 4, but its location in terms of x and y on the graph is 0, 4. And those are 2 locations on the graph, x and y intercept. So if you want to graph them, all you need is 2 points. You can draw your straight line. Next example here, example 2, graphing using intercepts. I've got the same equation right up here, but we already have the x-intercept and the y-intercept identified. So in order to graph this line using the x and y intercepts, I go to 10 on my x, which is over here, and then I go to positive 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 on my y, which is there. And any 2 points can determine a straight line. So all I got to do is take my straight line, put my first point here, Take my other point, stretch it so that it goes through the point 0, 4, and that actually is my line, and I can actually take the other end of this line if I want and stretch it a little bit farther. And graphing using intercepts are really that easy. Now sometimes when you find an x or y intercept, the x or y intercept ends up being a fraction, so if that's the case you might want to choose slope intercept to graph instead. However, both of these answers over here and here were integers, and integer values are very easy to find on a graph, so it's a good idea to graph using intercepts anytime your intercepts are integer values. Graphing horizontal and vertical lines. Okay, first thing is horizontal goes this way and vertical goes this way. A lot of people forget that. Look at this equation here. You'll notice it has both an x and a y in the problem. Well, anytime you have both an x and a y in a problem, what you'll end up having is some sort of diagonal line. It will not be horizontal or vertical. But look at our problems that we actually have over here. I have an x equals 4 and a y equals 3. Those aren't the intercepts of the problem like we did on the previous example. Those are actually the equations. They don't have a y in the first one, and the second one doesn't have an x. Okay, so we're going to ignore this line or this equation for now because it has nothing to do with these lines here. What I want to point out is if you have just x by itself and no other y value, a vertical line. A vertical line. What it's telling us is all of our points have to have a x value of 4. So if I put a 4 in both of my x values, I can pick anything I want for the y values. So let's say I pick 2 and I pick -2. What's important is the x value has to be 4. So if I go and plot those, 1, 2, 3, 4, up 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, down 2, the only way I can draw a straight line through those 2 points is to draw it vertically, like this. Looking at the second equation, y equals 3, anytime you have just a y equals a number by itself, we're looking at a horizontal line. And what that's telling us is no matter how many points I decide to graph, my y value of my coordinates have to be a 3. So you can pick any number you want for x. Let's say I pick a 4 and a -4. So I'm going to graph the first one, 4, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. That point would be right there, and -4, 3. -1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 would be over here. And the only way you can draw a straight line between those 2 points would be to draw it horizontally, like this. A lot of students get that backwards because the x-axis itself is horizontal, but if I have just x equals a number, the line is actually going to be vertical. And the y-axis is a vertical line, but if I have just y equals a number by itself, the line that's created is actually going to be horizontal. Example number 4, transforming to standard form. Remember that standard form is ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c all have to be integer values, and x and y have to be on the same side together. This is point slope form, so in order to get x and y together, the first thing I need to do is distribute. So I'm going to take my -1/3 and distribute it here and distribute it there. So I bring down my y minus 2 equals -3 times an x is -3 x. -3 times a positive 6 is -2. Now I want to bring my x value over here. It's a -1/3 on this side. So when I bring it to the left side, it becomes a positive 1/3 x. I have a y, a minus 2, and equals, remember I still have a -2 on this side. And now I need to move my 2 out of there because I only want x and y on the left hand side. Oops, I forgot my plus over here. There's a plus sign in between. So I'm going to plus 2 on both sides. These cancel out, 0. I still have a 1/3 x plus y is equal to negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Now, a lot of students aren't very comfortable with that because we have a 0 on the other side, but that is correct. Now, the only problem with this is that the a value is a fraction. You can't have fractional values. So the way we get rid of that is we don't multiply by a reciprocal, we multiply by the denominator, the least common denominator, which is 3. So 3 times here, and times here. 3 times a third gives you 1x. 3 times the y gives you plus 3y. And 3 times 0 is just 0. So my final equation in standard form is just 1x or x plus 3y equals 0. Here's another example. We want to transform to standard form, but this is slope-intercept form. We still want ax plus by equals c. The first thing I'm going to do is take my 5/3 x, move it over here with my y, but when I move it over there it becomes a negative or minus. So negative 5/3 x plus y is going to equal negative 4 still. And now, even though my x and y's are on the same side together, it's not in standard form because my a value out in front here is still a fraction. So what I need to do is multiply everything by 3. I need to get rid of that 3 in the denominator. So 3 times the negative 5/3 leaves you with negative 5x. 3 times the y gives you plus 3y. And 3 times the negative 4 gives you negative 12. Now officially that is the correct answer. However, some people, and it depends on who your instructors are, don't like this beginning number to be a negative. So one way that we can fix that is to multiply everything by negative 1. So multiply negative 1 here, multiply negative 1 here, and multiply negative 1 there. And the effect is the signs change. So instead of negative 5x, I have a positive. Instead of positive 3y, I have a negative. Instead of a negative 12, I have a positive 12. And this would be our final standard form equation. Some people might have noticed that if we'd put a negative up here and multiplied everything by a negative 3 instead of just a positive 3, that would have taken care of the negative out in front of the problem. Example 6. Here we're going to use the standard form model. A media download store sells songs for $1 each and movies for $12 each. You have $60 to spend. Write and graph an equation that describes the items you can purchase. And then the question they want to know is what are 3 combinations of songs and movies you can download with your purchase, or you can purchase. First thing we do is identify some variables. So let's say x equals number of songs to download or buy, and y equals number of movies that we can purchase. Well, songs go for $1 each times the number of songs that I can purchase, and movies go for $12 each. That means times by the number of songs that I can, or number of movies that I can purchase, which is y. And I have $60 to spend. So the relationship between these is if I add the cost of songs to the cost of movies, I should equal my total cost, or the total amount that I can actually spend. So that would be our equation in standard form. Now, to answer the question, what are 3 combinations of songs and movies you can purchase? Well, the first thing you can do is come up with the x and y intercepts. Okay, so we'll do the x-intercept here, and we'll do the y-intercept here. The x-intercept is when y is equal to 0. So if y is equal to 0, then 12 times 0 is 0. I have 1x plus 0 equals 60. So my y value is 0. 60. So x then would equal 60. So that means I can purchase 60 songs and no movies. That's one combination. Put my 12x back on there, or 12y. The next thing I can do is solve for the y-intercept. The y-intercept occurs when x is 0, so we put a 0 out in front here, and I get 0 plus 12y equals 60. And 0 plus 12y is just 12y. And then divide both sides by 12, and y ends up equaling 5. Okay, so I can buy 60 songs, 0 movies, or 0 songs and 5 movies. That's 2 combinations. The question was 3 combinations, and in order to do that, we're actually going to have to go to the graph. Now, I didn't graph it myself, so I went ahead and copied the graph that they had from the book. I will show you during class how to use the calculator to create the graphs, and then look at the table that's created by the graph to be able to make your determination. So, this line that you see here stands for all the possible combinations of songs and movies that are possible with your $60. So the line itself actually stands for exactly $60 spending. If I go a little past the line, that means I spent over 60. If I go a little under the line, that means I spent under 60. Well, we want to know exactly $60 because we use an equal sign. But one thing we have to be aware of is we can only purchase whole songs and whole movies. So we don't want, let's say, a number right here, because then that's going to be less than, more than 4 movies, but less than 5 movies. And you can't purchase 4.25 or 4.5 movies or anything like that. So what we need to do is find integer values. And we see we have a couple of them on here. 12 songs, 4 movies. 24 songs matches 3 movies, and that's exactly $60. 36 songs, 2 movies. 48 songs, 1 movie. Now they said only 3. We already have the y-intercept and the x-intercept. All we got to do is pick one more. They're suggesting that we pick this one right here, and that would be fine. 24 songs and 3 movies would work as well.